Hi and welcome to the masterclass to help you publish your poetry and master the art of curation so that you can do your book justice. First of all, congratulations for being here and congratulations on pursuing your dreams with your book. I'm really proud of you for doing your research and putting your all into your project. And I would love to assist you with that. So if you want to tell me a little bit about your book, you can tell me in the comments below. And we're just going to jump straight into this masterclass. I have the slideshow in front of me and you'll be able to see it on the screen. I'll just be up in the corner. Firstly, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Leonara, but I've published my book under my birth name, Dana Slade. I currently live in Adelaide and my book is being sold in many stores, physical and online. I'm on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and I'm in the Dimmicks bookstore, which is like the store in Australia. That's the big bookseller in Australia. This is my book called No Promises that I self-published with Ingram Spark. Now, it's a poetry book about breaking free of codependency and low self-esteem to more genuine healing and a rebirth. So I'm going to help you publish your poetry today and refine your vision for your poetry book. So the first thing I want to talk about is priorities and commitments. A lot of people say they want to publish a book, but then they don't take enough action. They might take some action, but not enough. I don't want to scare you away in this part, but it is good to be aware of how much work it does take to publish a poetry book unless you have unlimited expenditure and money to hire a bunch of people. I'm guessing that you've clicked on this video because you want to publish yourself. So we're not under any illusions here. Publishing a poetry book can be a little bit tough. I really want you to ask yourself, how important is it for you to publish this poetry book? And what is it that you really want to get across to people? What is your message? And this is a big question to start off with, and I know this workshop is about refining vision, but to keep pursuing something, we need passion. We need to know that this is a goal of ours. Is there a different format that you would be more comfortable with if you have a message, and maybe it's a video format that might be better for you? Like, remove your ego from the equation. Is publishing a book the best way for you to say what you want to say? And if it is, that's wonderful. Keep watching. But I just want you to know that people don't accidentally publish a poetry book. So if you know that this is a priority for you and you have time to commit, you have mental capacity to commit, then I'm so glad you're here. First thing we want to address is self-limiting beliefs. So publishing a book is going to be a bit uncomfortable because it's vulnerable. We're sharing a part of ourselves with the world, and poetry as a genre in general is usually quite a personal thing. We dig up the depths of our souls and we're sharing it. So if we have a self-limiting belief telling us that no one cares what we have to say, and as writers, often we do turn to the page to express ourselves, maybe because we do feel a bit isolated and people don't care about what we have to say. So maybe that's why we started writing poetry and now we're thinking about publishing. It's important to work through these self-limiting beliefs before we even start the poetry publishing process, because that it's just going to be so much smoother if you can work through this stuff at the start. So what is it that seems most daunting to you when you're thinking about your book being out there in the world? Is it that vulnerability aspect? And can you see a greater good for this? Where did this belief stem from as well? Like, was it from your childhood? Where does this belief get its validation from? Is it from a person, or feeling or a circumstance, a situation in your life that maybe doesn't have a lot of merit, and maybe you can acknowledge that that wasn't the healthiest person or most beneficial circumstance to draw that belief from, that maybe we can start to shake the foundations of what this belief is on and realize that there are a lot better places to build beliefs from, and we can start again, and we can start building these affirming beliefs to help us produce our poetry and publish it and share it with the world. So the very act of publishing a book requires you to break through these beliefs. A self-limiting belief that I came across was something to do with my cognitive abilities. I'm dyslexic, and I always thought that dyslexics, there's this stereotype that they're bad at writing, they're bad at literacy, and who am I to write a book? It will take me so much longer than the average person. Here we are now, and I have published a book, so I've moved past that self-limiting belief, and maybe it did take me a bit longer, but I had to come face to face with myself and ask how much of this self-limiting belief, how much of this supposed reality is an excuse and how much of it is real. And I had to work between those two lines. So it may help you to ask, okay, maybe I do have some handicaps, maybe I do have some things that are going on in my life right now, and these beliefs do have a foundation of some sort, but how much of this is an excuse that I'm making to not pursue my goals and publish this book, and how much of it can I actually control and can I have some influence on? So those are some things I want you to think about first. The next thing we're going to be talking about is self-publishing versus traditional publishing. We're going to go over this super quickly because I'm sure you've already done a bit of research yourself. If you haven't, self-publishing means you have complete control over the creative aspects of your book, or the complete creative control. So you own the rights, you get more of the royalties, and you earn more per book because you're paying for the printing costs, but you don't have a publishing house who's taking the majority of the royalties. So you earn more per book basically, and you get more control. Traditional publishing is when your publishing house, publishing company owns the rights and the royalties to your book, and they have a big say over your creative direction. So this means that they basically own your intellectual property in some ways. Like, you can't just decide to print this book again, self-publish it yourself. If you've sold the rights to this publishing company, you can't decide to go with a different self-publishing house after you've entered into a contract with a traditional publishing house. And there may or may not be an advance. That's also a big difference to consider with self-publishing versus traditional publishing. The thing with poetry is you're generally probably not going to get an advance anyway, because just the genre in general, traditional publishers don't often hand out advances. So in that respect, it's kind of similar, but if you were to do a novel, for example, then maybe traditional publishing is something you'd look into because they might give you an advance and it would be like a big lump sum up front. But this is a very basic overview, and I recommend you do your own research into what feels best for you. I'm kind of zooming through this part because I am aware that some of you may have looked into it already. Now we're going to be talking about how to spot a vanity press. So a vanity press poses as a traditional publishing house, but without that exclusivity. Like, you may find if you've submitted to traditional publishers, you'll get rejected. It's very exclusive and hard to get into traditional publishers. And Vanity Press seems more, they won't call themselves a vanity press, I'm just going to say that, but they seem more approachable and they'll often come up in internet searches when you think how to publish a book by myself, or you type something in there and they just have all this ads and funding to get you in. So I want to talk about the dangers of these vanity presses and how to avoid them. So first of all, what is a vanity press? They take your royalties but don't support you like a traditional publishing house would. So what this means is they don't give you an advance, which we established probably isn't likely for poetry anyway. They don't promote your book like a traditional publishing house would. That's something I missed in the comparison between self-publishing and traditional publishing, is the advertisement and the marketing. How it used to be is that traditional publishers would do a lot of that for you. They'd get the word out about your book. At the moment, I'm finding that even if you submit to traditional publishers, they almost expect you to have a large following and audience yourself, because that is just a marketing strategy nowadays. So I would say that you've still got your work cut out for you with marketing, even through traditional publishers, especially with poetry nowadays. So maybe that would have informed what option you went with before, but in terms of marketing. But either way, just even pitching a book to a traditional publisher, you will have had to do a lot of self-marketing anyway. Back into the vanity press. So basically, vanity press will not do any marketing for you. Like traditional publishers will market you and have all these networks and connections that might help you and assist you, whereas vanity press usually don't have much of that support, and they make their money off of you. They make their money off of the authors, not the book sales. So it's not in their best interest to sell as many of your books as they can. It's in their best interest to hook all of these vulnerable authors like yourself who are struggling to get picked up by a traditional publisher or are struggling to self-publish. Then there's another type of publisher that is often confused for vanity press. So it can be a bit hard to spot these vanity presses, because small publishing houses might also look like these. Small publishing houses make their money off selling your books, and they're maybe not as reputable as, much like vanity presses, they're maybe not as reputable because they are so small and they're still building a name for themselves. But the difference is that you can see where the expenses are going. You know what you're paying for. Each small publishing house is different. They often don't have much money. They may offer you a little bit of advance. They probably take less of your royalties than a big traditional publishing house. But if they're asking any money from you, it's usually like to order your first bulk order of books or whatever, or like they're supporting you through the process. They're trying to advertise your book and looking for opportunities with you. Vanity press is not concerned about what's in your book. They could not care less. Like, that's why a lot of people who self-publish end up going with vanity press, because they're like, oh well, they're not asking anything of me, they're not asking me to reflect. But like, if someone is selling your book, they should care what's in it. Like, they've got to market it, they've got to believe in it. So small publishing houses do care what's in your book. They will probably look over it to edit it. At the end of the day, remember, vanity press makes their money off of vulnerable authors, and obviously traditional publishers and small publishing houses care about actually getting your book out into the world, and they have belief in your book. So it's in your best interest to stay away from these vanity presses. Again, they won't call themselves vanity press, but you can find out if they are simply by Googling, is X publisher a vanity press? And usually something will come up. And that's kind of the best, easiest, most simplified way to figure it out. But if you do a bit more research into vanity presses, you'll be able to spot the hidden clues yourself. Okay, now we're going to get into what you're all interested in, which is curation. In this section, I'm going to be explaining the difference between editing versus curation. So there are a few key differences. Editing is where you're going to be spending most of your time. There's loads of different types of editing, proofreading, copy editing, there's a whole list I can throw up if you're interested, and you can also hire these different types of editors. But basically, editing, if you're self-publishing, is where you're going to be spending most of your time if you're not hiring these other people, but you really should be doing some editing yourself as well. The main difference between editing and curation is that editing is polishing something that you're already sure is going to be in there, whereas curating is deleting. Curating is selecting certain parts. If you curate before you edit, then you are saving yourself so much time. In terms of poetry, curation is going to look like deleting entire poems or selecting poems within your theme that talk to your message and such. Some questions that are going to help you get good at distinguishing which poems are worth saving and how to curate to do justice for your vision is, what do you actually like about that poem? What's in there that is speaking to your message? Do you need this entire poem to convey the message, or can you just say it in a few lines? Do you already have a poem that speaks to this message? Can you take those few lines you really like and put them into a pre-existing poem? What does your art form demand? This is a big question. What does your art form demand? Put aside your ego. What is it that this book needs to be great? Take yourself out of the picture. What is it? I know that these books can be deeply personal and we're drawing on a personal experience, but if you were to read this book as your ideal audience and reader, what is this person looking for? And have you already given it to them in a different way? Does your book really demand you to breach your privacy? Or does it demand that you use more textual language? Or does it demand that you have some simpler poems to take breaths in between longer ones? Like, what is your format? This is my favorite analogy to help you curate your poetry book, and it is, what makes a beautiful house? I love this prompt because when we compare our book to a house, it really makes us think about comfort and connection. So what makes a beautiful home? Is it the vast amount of objects, beautiful, even useful objects? Imagine a home with just an abundant amount of beautiful and useful objects. Imagine a whole room full of these objects, but they're everywhere. They're just taking up the entire room. There's no space to walk. It feels crammed and claustrophobic and unhygienic. That's not what makes a beautiful house. It's not the objects. So yes, maybe you have a lot of beautiful poems. If you have too many of these, the book will become ugly. So I really want you to think about picking your very best poems. Poems that are cohesive and go with the room, go with the theme of your book, of your house. And remember, your poetry book is only as good as your worst poem. We don't want a heap of mid poems. I know each of your poems probably means something very meaningful to you, but we have to balance what we want and what our audience wants and our readers want. So this is a hard lesson and it may seem a bit brutal, but it is very good advice that I have been given from my editor and my uncle who's published his own poetry book. He's told me time and time again, your book is only as good as your worst poem. And it is so true, because when you read a book, you might remember and think it's a lovely book, and you might remember all the beautiful poems, but if there's just one that really doesn't match the vibe, it just seems a bit unpolished. It makes the whole book seem a bit unprofessional maybe as well, and it reflects on the whole book. It's not one poem, everything is interconnected. That's what we want this book to be. We want it to be interconnected. So of course, if you put something in there, it's going to affect the experience of the rest of the book. It's not just one poem. When you think of a home, you think of space. Yes, beautiful items in places, but with their own space to exist in and be amplified. If you have a bunch of mid poems and all the good poems are mixed up, then it's very hard to put a spotlight on the really good poems, because people are going to be falling asleep. People are going to be like, oh yes, it's okay. And they expect the next poem they read. If they've read 3 kind of okay poems, there's nothing wrong with them, but they're okay. And they turn the page and you've got a really good poem there. They're probably already in the wavelength and the mindset that this is going to be another poem on that level. So we don't want to accept that example. That's why it's so important to have your best poems at the start of your book. Like, the first 10 pages of your poetry book should be really hard hitting. Not just because Amazon has the look inside function and that's what people are going to see first if they get a sample of your book. But yeah, like, you want someone to open to any page as well, like in a bookstore, and go, wow, like, can you imagine that? People walking into a bookstore, getting your book, opening it, and whatever page they fall on is fate. It's what gets them hooked. This is what I was picturing when I was doing my book. I'm like, is there any page that I would be embarrassed for someone to open to as the first introduction to my book? And if the answer was yes, then I got rid of that poem. It also really helped to have someone whose opinion I cared about a lot look over my book in front of me. It was one thing to send my book off to my editor who'd seen all my crappy poetry before, and I did care a lot about his opinion, but watching someone, I got my boyfriend who I only just started seeing and you know, he wasn't a qualified poetry critic or anything. He was just a normal person, and guess what? People who are reading your book are usually not poetry critics, but they are normal people. And so it is good to get both sides, both people's reaction. But I had a lot of respect for him and his opinion. He's done a lot of creative projects himself. And when I put my first draft of my book in front of him, I immediately knew which poems had to go, because I was like, I didn't want him to read those. I was like, oh, that's not my best work. Imagine if he flicks to that page. That's how you know that you need to get rid of those poems. This is the best tip I have for curating your poetry book. Just even putting your book in front of someone, they don't even have to read everything in there, but just like, you'll know consciously, like, it will all come up in your head and yes. So again, ask yourself how each individual poem or line in a poem is contributing to the vision and message you want to convey. This vision that you have for your poetry book should include a who and a where. Vision will help you decide on what publishing route you want to go with. So when I'm talking about who and where, we're thinking about that reader in the store, right? Who's picking up this poetry book. But also, where is this person in the world? Is this person in Rome and you're in Australia or the United States? If you want global distribution, you can totally do that with self-publishing. But if you want them to physically pick it up in a bookstore, then maybe traditional publishing, which we previously talked about, is the route for you. So this is why having a vision is so important. It's because when you're picturing who's reading your book, what sort of person it is, and where they're going to find your book, it's really going to inform you on what publishing option you want to go for. One way we can make space in our book is to change, and it's called juxtaposition, okay? One way we can make space in our book is by putting longer poems and shorter poems, longer poems, and alternating, so readers can take a breath, they're not in overwhelm. And this is a bit like having one big item in your room over here and then some empty space and another big item. You don't want to just cram all your furniture into one corner. You know what I mean? Upon editing, I decided to include another slide to help you understand what I mean by creating space and how to use formatting as a tool for curation and refining your vision. When you've laid out all your pages and you can see what's in front of you, you then know what you have too much of and what you don't have enough of. When you start ordering these poems based on, you can see the dot points on the screen, emotions, length, shape, which is another word for format of poems, stylistic choices like rhyme schemes. Maybe you don't want 2 poems with that are heavy on the E sound. Imagery, maybe you don't want 2 poems next to each other, or 2 is okay, but maybe you don't want like 5 of your river poems right next to each other, because readers might feel like it's feeling a bit same. So this is a little guide for you to follow and think about ways you can distinguish and make your poems stand out whilst also remaining relevant in the larger scheme of things. We have plenty more to cover in this masterclass, but if you're enjoying it so far and you're finding my prompts and tips useful, you can get more from my workbook, which is on refining your book's vision. There'll be more prompts, more exercises that you can go through to help you get clear on how to get your book to accurately reflect your vision for it and your intentions and messaging behind it. These are all things I haven't had room to include in this masterclass, and it's completely free, so just pop down to the link below and you can download it now. Thank you, and moving on to the next topic. I won't go too into formatting because that's a whole nother video in itself, but basically just lay your pages out on the floor and you can see them all at once that way. You're going to lay them out on the floor and then you get a visual representation of what the text looks like from far away. It's so different reading your poetry as well. Like if you've read it on a computer screen this whole time, just seeing it in a different format it just goes into your brain differently and you can make some different decisions based on that. But this will help inform you where you want to put, you need to put your blank pages if you're formatting and self-publishing. You need to add all those things yourself. Now, one last thing I want to go into before we end this masterclass is curation in terms of printing. So I'm guessing if you've come this far, you are determined to self-publish. And when we self-publish, it means we have to survey each print-on-demand company and do our research into the pros and cons of each. That's an entire other video by itself, but what I will say is try printing drafts of your book, author's copies, before you decide on which print-on-demand company you want to go with. I firstly started with KDP, Kindle Direct Publishing, and I printed off a book with them. I did not like the quality of the book. The pages bent up like this and just stayed up, and I just wasn't happy with the quality. So I went and I printed off a book with Ingram Spark, and the cover feels really nice. It's much better quality. It cost a bit more, but it was so worth it because when my customers pick up the book, the first thing they say, like honestly, every customer who picks up my book, or even the bookseller who I'm giving them some stock and they touch my book and they're like, oh my gosh, this feels so good. Yeah, because I care about the quality of my book. I'm not going to do all this work on curation and then just have a bad quality book. Curation, the quality of the book is part of curation, okay? So really just invest in finding the right book publisher for you. I won't go too deep into the formatting side of things, but if you're interested in that, I have a guidebook, which includes 8 years of research and hundreds of hours I spent watching tutorials on YouTube. It's all in one document, so you can go get that below in the description. It's every single resource that it took for me to publish this book, and it's a step-by-step guide. You can use everything. It's like a cheat sheet. Just trust me on this, it's going to help you so much. It's everything in one place. Again, it took me 8 years to put this together, so really help yourself out and grab that. I'm genuinely so excited for you and your book, and I hope to see it on the shelf soon. Thank you very much for watching and for your time. I hope this helped enormously, and if it did, please let me know. And if I've missed anything as well, or you'd like to ask a question, please just drop it below and I'll do my best at getting back to you. Again, I have a free workbook below which will further assist you with some curation exercises and questions that will help you work towards your vision of what you want your book to be. You can also follow my Instagram, The Poisonous Poetess, if you'd like to see where I've gone with my book. And if you need any more help, I offer mentoring. You can book a session in the description as well. Thank you for being here, and all the best with your publishing journey.